Until now, Jinnah had managed to keep the Lahore Resolution silent about the relationship of Muslim provinces to any centre, and in this way managed to avoid an explicit endorsement of the Punjab's preferences for a weak federal centre. Jinnah's strategy depended on the assumption that the British would never entertain such an extreme version of the provincial thesis, that is, the right of provinces to secede. Yet here was Cripps doing the unthinkable and taking the provincial demand implicit in the Lahore Resolution at face value. It was a way of flushing Jinnah out into the open and forcing him to show where he stood on the question of centre. However, the Congress rejected the Cripps offer and so did Jinnah, arguing for a communal right of self-determination for Muslims. Some Punjabi leaguers calculated that their provincial prospects would improve if the League's program had a more religious tone. In October 1944, Abdul Sattar Niazi called a meeting in Lahore to discuss making Pakistan an Islamic state. The Civil and Military Gazette saw this as an open rebellion against Jinnah and the League. In April 1943, Jinnah had carefully skated around the issue, arguing that the Constitution and the government of Pakistan will be what the people will decide. A resolution which would have committed the League to basing the future Constitution of Pakistan on Islamic principles was withdrawn at Jinnah's insistence. The resolution was drafted by Dr. Abdul Hamid Qazi of Bombay. It called for Pakistan's constitution to be based on the Quran and Hukumat-e-Ilahiyya, government based on the principles of the first 4 caliphs of Islam. Jinnah thought that this amounted to a vote of censure on every leaguer, and his intervention ensured that the draft resolution was swept under the carpet. By inference, every Muslim had the right to try his hand at shaping the future by convincing his co-religionists. Jinnah preferred to leave the convincing to men who mattered in Punjab, like Doltana, who needed to keep the way open for an alliance with non-Muslims in the assembly. Not only did Doltana want to throw out a line to Hindus and Sikhs, he was also glad to see communists joining the League. The price that the Muslim factions in the provinces demanded for accepting the League as their spokesman at the centre was license for an almost anarchical autonomy in their local affairs. This meant that Jinnah could not afford to be precise about the Pakistan demand, since what suited one faction might upset the other. His strategy at the centre was not in the immediately obvious interest of the Muslim majority provinces. Jinnah was never able to reconcile his real purposes and the conflicting aspirations of his divided and often warring constituents. Muslim League's victory in the 1945-1946 elections clearly drew the lines for the end game. Congress still wanted independence to come before settling the communal problem. This meant having an essentially unitary form of government. Jinnah and the League demanded that the first step must be to accept Pakistan in principle now that the Muslim electorate had given its verdict. The principle of Pakistan, Jinnah explained, meant that the unitary centre of British India be replaced with 2 federations organized by 2 constituent assemblies. These assemblies would then send their representatives to a centre above them, which would coordinate the policies of the 2 federations in such matters as defense and foreign affairs. By allowing this centre an executive but no legislature, Jinnah avoided the obvious difficulty of claiming parity of status in an all-India legislature when the Federation of Muslim provinces only contained a quarter of the country's population. There was some merit and some logic, albeit strained, in Jinnah's line of argument. Once it had achieved equality of status at the all-India level, the League might be able to win the safeguards for which it had been fighting all along. On 23rd March 1946, the Cabinet Mission plan arrived in India. The Cabinet Mission proposed a 3-tiered federation. At the top, there would be a union of all India. In the middle, the sub-federations of Pakistan and Hindustan with their separate legislatures, and below them the provinces and states or groups of states which agreed to join one or the other of the 2 sub-federations. On 25th April 1946, Jinnah was shown two plans. Plan A was for the three-tier federal union and Plan B was a minimum sovereign Pakistan. In the first open indication that he might settle for something less than sovereign Pakistan, Jinnah rejected Plan B as definitely unacceptable, but said he was prepared to consider Plan A, that is the three-tiered federal union, if Congress would do the same. Neither Gandhi nor Nehru liked that scheme. The mission's hope somehow was to arrive at a position which Jinnah could regard as having conceded Pakistan and Congress could regard as not having conceded it. On 16 May 1946, the mission proposed the three-tier system, a compromise between Jinnah's full sovereign Pakistan and Congress's strong and organic center. The union would control three common subjects. It would have the power to raise its own revenues. It would have an executive and a legislature with representatives from British India and Indian states. Significantly, there would be no parity between Hindu majority and Muslim majority provinces. The 16th May statement was potentially a disaster for Jinnah. He wanted parity, he was against allowing the union center to raise its own revenues, he did not want a union legislature and had insisted that even minor decisions, whether legislative or executive, on any controversial matter at the center must have a 3/4 majority. The League had demanded that the provinces and the princely states should be sovereign in all matters except those specifically conceded to the center. The mission, however, spoke of residuary powers and not sovereign rights. While there was the right to ask for change in constitution at 10-year intervals, there was no mention of the right of secession from the union. All in all, the 16th May statement vis-a-vis the cabinet mission plan contained evidence of a greater deference to the Congress standpoint. The League had asked for the Hindus and Muslims to have seats in proportion to their populations in the Union Assembly. Congress preferred single transferable votes since Hindu and Sikh minorities in the Muslim provinces had been given weightage. The mission ruled along Congress lines. Muslims could now expect only 79 seats in the central legislature, which contained 292. In mission's proposals, the Muslim provinces of Northwest ended up with only 2 seats more than Muslims in minority provinces. On 6 June 1946, the All India Muslim League passed its momentous resolution accepting the mission statement, which, it must be stated, had rejected Pakistan. It is important to read Dr. Jalal's account of her interview with Mia Mumtaz Doltana, the Punjab leaguer, who told her that Jinnah never wanted a Pakistan which involved the partition of India and was in favor of accepting the cabinet mission's proposals. The 10-year period was the bait that Jinnah offered the separatists in the League Council. Doltana said that this was enough time to ensure a Hindu-Muslim accommodation, and as far as the Punjabi League was concerned, these 10 years would be forever. Dr. Jalal writes that the last 13 months of British rule saw the tragic collapse of Jinnah's strategy. Tragic because the Quaid-e-Azam had always tried to keep himself above communalism in its cruder forms and had cherished his own vision of Indian unity. For 6 years, he had managed to paint a thin veneer of solidarity and unanimity over the interests which were neither solid nor unanimous. This he had achieved only by keeping his purposes to himself and by allowing his Muslim constituents to see whatever they chose to see in a Pakistan which he had left intentionally undefined. By grouping Muslim provinces compulsorily, the mission gave Jinnah at least a chance of curbing the particularism of his constituents. But the Congress did not want grouping and did not need it, since its center was much stronger than the League's. The mission succeeded in straining Jinnah's already uncertain hold over his followers who for the first time were given a hint of their leader's purposes at the center and began to sense the weaknesses in his bargaining position.